listening to the Heartland Author Podcast. I am Aaron Apollo Camp. For today's episode, I had the honor of interviewing Daniel Alfon. Daniel is a LinkedIn expert and is the author of the book, How to Build a LinkedIn Profile for Business Success, an Ultimate Guide. Daniel had to deal with a power outage during the interview, but fortunately, the power came back on for him to complete the interview. I'm here with Daniel Alfon, who is the author of How to Build a LinkedIn Profile for Business Success. Daniel, welcome to the Heartland Author Podcast.
Thank you, Aaron. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Feel free to introduce yourself to our listeners.
With pleasure. In 2004, I joined LinkedIn, and a decade later, I released my book. It's self-published on Amazon. And back then, Aaron, I thought that the hard work would be to write the book. And when the book was out, I realized that promoting the book and getting exposure to the book was way more challenging and something I had to consider before I even started writing.
Now, without spoiling too much of the book, what is How to Build a LinkedIn Profile for Business Success about?
With pleasure. It's a three-step guide. The first step is to identify your ideal reader. The second step is to decide which action you'd like those ideal readers, Aaron, to perform when they bump into your LinkedIn profile. And the third step is to make your profile as friendly and easy for people to find and reach out to you, whether you're an author, an editor, a book designer, or any other profession.
Now, is your book self-published or traditionally published?
Self-published.
Okay. Now, are you currently working on writing more books?
No, not really. I did contribute 2 more chapters to other people's book. I contributed a chapter to a book called Podcast Mastery, about podcast guesting and podcast hosting, and I also contributed a chapter to the growth hacking book. Those chapters were LinkedIn tactics for podcasters and for growth hackers, but I'm part of 10 or 20 people who composed and wrote the book with me. I just contributed 1 chapter to that.
Now, I did a non-scientific poll on Mastodon a couple of weeks ago asking Mastodon users if they considered YouTube to be a social media platform. 18 people voted in the poll, 9 voted yes, 9 voted no, so that's an exact 50-50 split. LinkedIn, even though it's almost a totally different service to YouTube, does have one similarity in that it's debatable as to whether or not it's a social media platform. Do you consider LinkedIn to be a social media platform, and why or why not?
That's a great question. I think I would call LinkedIn a professional networking website and not necessarily social media per se.
Yeah, because when people think of social media, they would think of like Facebook, Twitter, stuff like that, not LinkedIn, which is more of a professional networking type site.
Yes, you nailed it. And in fact, LinkedIn is one of the very few channels out there where you can succeed without sharing very often.
Yeah, whereas a typical social media site, you would have to post regularly to get any kind of audience.
Absolutely, and the reason, one of the reasons for that is that the number one action performed by LinkedIn users is simply to visit other people's profiles. When you think of it, if I found a tweet of yours, then what I would be interested in is usually the content itself. And when I check you out on Instagram, I would want to see the images or see the misunderstood, misused, and mispronounced words cover that you uploaded. But on LinkedIn, people are often there to check you out before an important meeting, before an interview, before booking or recording a podcast. So your profile counts, and it's way, way more important than the content you share.
Now, your book, How to Build a LinkedIn Profile for Business Success, was published way back in 2014. How has LinkedIn changed in the 8 years since your book was published?
Great question. It has changed dramatically. The essence is there, but the rhythm of changes has accelerated. And I think LinkedIn has close to 900 million members today. And since you hit record, 1,000 people sign up. Every second, 3 people sign up.
Well, that is phenomenal growth for LinkedIn, because LinkedIn was not that big of a site back when you wrote the book. I mean, it wasn't small by any means, but it didn't have quite as many active users as it does now.
You're absolutely right. The growth has accelerated, and my guess is most of the growth is actually outside of the U.S.
Now, would you recommend LinkedIn to people whose primary job is writing books, and why or why not?
Excellent. So I don't think LinkedIn is a good solution for everyone, but I think the question I would ask is, could LinkedIn help you, Aaron, or help our audience here, make progress in what they consider the most important aspect about their book? So let me give you a couple of examples. If you're when you publish your book, instead of considering LinkedIn to be the place where you would say, I'm the author of Lady in the Fast Lane and here's my book, instead of doing that, what you could do is find people who could help you get more exposure to the book itself. For example, if one of the themes in the book is self-empowerment, you could find companies who would be willing for you to come and talk to their staff or to the executive teams or to the leadership about your journey and about ways they could retain and hire the best companies, the best employees in today's uncertain job market. So it would tweak your objective from X more readers to X more revenues. It could be consulting, it could be a virtual book tour, it could be lots of things related to your expertise and not necessarily just another reader for your book.
Yeah, if I were to start using a service like LinkedIn on a regular basis, it would not be to promote a book that I've written or a book that's about to be published. It would be to find a book editor or a book cover designer or any kind of professional help.
Aaron, I think you nailed it. It's very important, because when you see that someone who could help you edit the book is available on LinkedIn, then you can check out their output, you can be introduced to them, and they can help you get your book out there in the best possible way and make the book professional. LinkedIn even has a service for freelancers to offer their expertise on LinkedIn. So it's definitely one platform you could use to make your book more appealing. You would write the book, okay? You're responsible for 99% of the content, but the book cover is important, and editing is very important too. You could use LinkedIn to find agents or to find other people who could even help you get more exposure. You could find bloggers or podcasters where you would talk about your subject of expertise and you would mention the book, and then people would discover your book through their platform of choice.
Now I'm going to ask you a personal question to finish out this interview. What is your favorite aspect of living in Israel?
The favorite aspect is knowing it's home. I've spent more than 12 years abroad. I was born in France. I came to Israel. I returned to France when I was a teen. And when I was 23, I realized that Israel is the only place for me to live a fulfilling life, and I haven't looked back since. It's an amazing place. I know we're making lots of noise, but it's really a small place. You can cross Israel from east to west in less than an hour, and the people here are amazing, and it's home.
Well, Daniel, I thank you for appearing on the Heartland Author Podcast.
Thank you very much, Aaron. It's been a blast. Thank you very much.
Daniel was a wonderful guest for this podcast, and if you're considering using LinkedIn, I would recommend reading his book. This is Aaron Apollo Camp reminding y'all to write your imagination. Bye for now. You can learn more about me and my book writing projects at campaaronapollo.wixsite.com/authoraac. You can follow me on Twitter and Facebook at authoraac and on Instagram at aacscribe. Copyright 2022, Aaron Apollo Camp, all rights reserved. This podcast episode is intended for the private listening of our audience. Any reuse or retransmission of this podcast episode without the express written consent of the podcast host is prohibited, except under fair use guidelines. Royalty-free music and sound effects obtained from https://www.zapsplat.com.